Welcome to Culture Alley Mandarin. 你好, this is Basic Mandarin Lesson 4. Let's start by going over some of the phrases that you learned in the last lesson again. Let's take the same example we took last time. Mark and Lisa are out having a conversation in Mandarin. Let's first look at the conversation in English and then in Mandarin.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. And you?
I'm also very good.
Now, let's hear them have this conversation in Mandarin.
你好。
你好。
你好吗？
我很好。你呢？
也很好。
Great! Let's start with today's lesson. Today's lesson covers some basic greetings and ending with a general etiquette conversation. Today, we'll learn some other responses to the question, how are you? And learn basic greetings such as sorry, thank you, etc. Let's start with some basic greetings. Let's look at a few other responses to the common question, how are you? Or 你好吗? This will help you learn and participate in some interesting conversations. Let's start with a common one. Not bad. Let's learn the vocabulary to say not bad. Not translates to boo, and bad translates to 错. Before moving on, take a closer look at the pronunciations for the new words we've just learned. Let's start with not. Not translates as boo and is pronounced using a mid-rising tone. Can you try and say boo? It is said with a mid-rising tone, like boo. Great! Let's see the next one. Bad translates to 错 and is pronounced using a falling tone or the fourth tone. Let's try and say 错. It is said with a falling tone, like 错. Wonderful. Great. Now let's use them as a phrase. In not bad, the adverb not translates to boo, while the adjective bad translates to 错. Here's an important grammar tip for you. Not, which translates to boo, is an adverb that is used to negate verbs. It is also important to remember that in Mandarin, adverbs always come before the verb. For example, the verb to be translates to 是. So, if you want to say is not, or are not, or am not, we say 不是, and not the other way around. Coming back to our greeting, not bad translates to 不错. Once again, it's 不错. Good. So remember that not translates to 不 and bad translates to 错. Let's have another conversation between Mark and Lisa. Let's first cover it in English.
How are you?
I'm very good. And you?
Not bad.
Now, let's see how this conversation would go in Mandarin.
你好吗？
我很好。你呢？
不错。
Very good then. Let's move on. Another way of replying to how are you is by saying fine. Let's take a look at the vocabulary required for the same. In Mandarin, fine is translated as still okay. So, still translates to 还, while okay translates to 可以. Now, let's try and pronounce these words. Let's start with still. Still translates to 还. and is pronounced using a mid-rising tone, or the second tone. Can you try and say hi? It is said with a mid-rising tone, like hi. Good job! Let's see the next one. Okay. Okay translates to 可以. 可以 stresses on two tones, E and I, and on both it uses the falling rising tone. Let's break it down and see how each one of these is pronounced. Let's try and say 可. It is said with a falling rising tone, like 可. Can you try and say 乙? It is said with a falling rising tone, like 乙. Great! Now let's try it together. Can you say 可以? It is said with a falling rising tone, like 可以. Note that 可以 is spoken in the second and third tone when together, keeping the two third tone rule in mind, which was that whenever there are two third tones in a row, the first third tone becomes a second tone. As we saw, still translates to hi, and okay translates to 可以. Thus, fine translates to 还可以, which literally means still okay. The word okay serves more than one purpose in Mandarin. 可以 also reflects the ability to ask permission. Let's see how. 可以 is made up of two characters. The first one, that is 可, means can or may, and the second one, which is 乙, means according to. Thus, 可以 serves more than one purpose. Alright, it's quiz time now. Let's see if you remember all that we've learned till now. How do we say not bad in Mandarin? Should we say 不错 or 还可以? Or shall we say 您好? To say not bad in Mandarin, we use the phrase 不错. Hope you got that one right. Let's do a quick review of the new vocabulary we learned today. Not translates to 不, and bad translates to 错, while still translates to 还, and okay translates to 可以. Well done! Now, let's move over to the second topic for today's lesson, which is etiquette conversations. Let's start. Let's learn a few expressions that are often used daily. Let's begin with thanks. Thanks translates to 谢谢, which literally means thanks or to thank. Here is an important pronunciation tip. In Pinyin, X is pronounced like shi. Keeping this in mind, let's look at the pronunciation of 谢谢. Thanks translates to 谢谢 and is pronounced using a falling tone. Note that 谢谢 can simply be broken into two similar parts, except that the second time we say 谢, the sound softly fades away, so it becomes 谢谢. Let's try and say 谢谢. Once again, it is said with a falling tone, like 谢谢. Since thanks translates to 谢谢, thank you becomes 谢谢你. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Let's see how we can respond to the greeting, thank you. In English, we would ideally say, you're welcome, while responding to thank you. In Mandarin, however, you are welcome is translated as don't be polite. That literally indicates you don't need to thank me. Let's take a look at how it is said. In Mandarin, don't be polite is translated as not polite, because polite is an adjective and the to be verb is not used with adjectives in Mandarin. Let's look at the translation. Polite translates to 客气, and bu means not. Thus, don't be polite translates to 不客气. Before moving on, let's see the pronunciation for these words. We already know how to pronounce bu. It is said with a mid-rising tone. Let's see how to pronounce 客气. Before moving on, it is important to understand that in Pinyin, Q is pronounced with a ch sound, unlike the English Q as in quiet. Now, let's take a look at polite in Mandarin. Polite literally translates to 客气, where k is pronounced using a falling tone and qi with the neutral tone. Can you try and say 客气? Great! Now let's say the whole phrase together. Don't be polite translates to 不客气. Let's say that one more time. 不客气. Brilliant! Now, let's look at how to say sorry in Mandarin. Interestingly, it's a lot more different than how we say it in English. There are many ways to say sorry in Mandarin, but one of the most common and versatile phrases is 对不起. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Let's take a look. 对 is pronounced using a falling tone, like 对. Let's try and say it again. 对. Good job! We already know how to say 不. Let's review the word 不. Before moving on, recall that in Mandarin, Q is pronounced with a ch sound. Qi is pronounced using the falling, rising tone. Let's try and say it again. Qi. The whole phrase together translates as 对不起. Can you try and say that again? It's 对不起, where Q is said with a ch sound. That was nicely done. Let's move on. Another way to say sorry in Mandarin is to say the words 不好意思. That literally means not a good meaning. Let's learn what this means and where it is used. 不好意思 is frequently used in the Chinese culture as a way of saying sorry or I'm embarrassed. Since we already know how to pronounce 不好, let's learn how to say 意思 and see what it means. 意思 is a two-syllable word where 意 is pronounced using a falling tone and 思 is pronounced using a neutral, soft fading tone. The word meaning translates to 意思. Can you try and say 意思? Once again, it is said as 意思. Good job! 不好意思 is a versatile phrase and can also be used as thank you in some cases. It is used to express a feeling of gratitude, such as when one wants to say, your kindness is too much, or thanks, this wasn't needed. A good example of using this phrase as a way of saying thank you would be one where you are accepting a gift. Especially in the event of gift giving, the Chinese tradition demands that the gift is first refused and finally accepted with 谢谢 or 不好意思. This is done for any type of gift including picking up the tab in a restaurant. So now you know different ways of thanking people in Mandarin. Let's learn the last greeting for the day. That is, it's all right. It's all right translates to 没关系, which literally means that's all right or it doesn't matter. Let's look at the pronunciation for this new phrase. Let's break it up and start with 没. 没 is pronounced using a mid-rising tone. Can you try and say 没? It is said with a mid-rising tone, like 没. Good work. Let's move on to the next one. That is 关. 关 is pronounced using a high-level tone. Let's try and say 关. It is said with a high-level tone, like 关. Great! And lastly, let's take a look at she. She is pronounced in the neutral tone. Let's say it one more time. It's she. That's all for today. All right, it's quiz time now. Let's see if you remember what we've learned till now. In Mandarin, how do we say thanks? Do we say 不客气? Or do we say 谢谢? Or is it the third option, 还可以? In Mandarin, thanks translates to, you got that right, 谢谢. Let's see another one. What is the correct translation for the phrase, you're welcome? Is it 不客气? Or is it 谢谢? Or do you think it's 还可以? Pick one. You're welcome literally translates to don't be polite in English and is said as 不客气 in Mandarin. How do we say sorry in Mandarin? Do we say 不客气? Or is it 谢谢? Or is it the last one, 不好意思? Out of the options provided, sorry translates to 不好意思. Great! Let's do a quick review of the phrases and greetings we learned today. Thanks translates to 谢谢. You are welcome translates to 不客气. Sorry translates to 不好意思, as well as 对不起. And lastly, it's all right translates to 没关系. We hope you've learned them all. Once again comes the most interesting part of the lesson. It's time for our Culture Leaf. In today's Culture Leaf, we shall talk about Chinese names. Names in China are used slightly differently than names you would hear in the West. Let's look at some examples. For example, Wang Peng is a boy's name. In China, family or clan names always precede personal or given names. In this case, Wang is the family name and Peng is the given name. Li You is a girl's name, where Li is the family name and You is the given name. In Chinese culture, the use of given names or first names often suggests a much higher degree of intimacy than is the case in the West. If one's given name is one syllable, its use is even more limited and is usually confined to one's lover or spouse. For example, Wang Peng's girlfriend can address him as Peng, but most people would call him Wang Peng rather than Peng. In the next lesson, we will learn some common expressions such as good morning, good evening, etc. We hope you enjoyed your lesson today. See you at the alley for the next one.